What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Games of the Glory Days. I am your host, Johnny Blitz, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite genres when it comes to video games, and that is horror survival or horror in general. And we're going to be talking about one of the greatest franchises, even though people are going to argue this to be made. Wear my PlayStation shirt because this game originated on PlayStation. I'm going to be talking about Resident Evil. So the original Resident Evil was released back in 1996. I was too young to play this at the time. I was just 9 years old. I had a PlayStation, but I wasn't allowed to play these games. My mom was very strict when it came to the games I played. We would rent games from Blockbuster because buying games was too expensive. And I remember when I got older, I think like 12, 13, my uncle was like, "Oh, I don't play this anymore. Do you want to play it?" And I tried to play it on the PlayStation. I couldn't get the controls down. It was just too clunky. Things were a little bit different than playing Resident Evil 2 that I had on the Nintendo 64, which is very rare to find now. I think it's very expensive game if you can find it. And that was my first memory of Resident Evil, was playing Resident Evil 2 on the N64. I played this game countless times. Always went and tried to beat my fastest time. I think my fastest time was like an hour and 35 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes. I've known people who've done it in like very close to an hour or just over an hour. And my love for this game grew. And then I went back and played the ones on the PlayStation, which were a little bit different. Items are in different places, and it was a little bit different. And then in 1999, they re-released Resident Evil 3. And I remember I was so excited because I got this game as a Christmas gift. And I played it and hated it. My favorite part of the game was doing the water sample and the water treatment facility. And I'm going to be going into the remake later on in this video and gonna shit on that more than this shitty game that was made. Then in 2000, they made a harder version of Resident Evil called Survivor. I remember buying this on I apologize. Been up since 3 a.m., but let's get back into this. Very hard version of Resident Evil 1. Less ammo, harder enemies. The hunters in this game are faster. The lickers are faster. They're harder to kill. I bought this when it was like a backwards compatible thing, or like on the store on the PS3, and I couldn't get into it. It was just too hard and too annoying that I just gave up on it. And Code Veronica. Now, Code Veronica was regionally released on the Dreamcast. It was a Dreamcast exclusive. I remember playing this game and loving it. It is and still and always will be my favorite Resident Evil. The story, the characters, the difference of this game was just amazing. Playing as Claire and the other little characters that everybody knows, that you meet these characters and they just end up dying anyway. So they really don't mean anything, but we got to get this room to bring it to that room, to go back to this room, to go back to that room, the back and forth. Got kind of tedious, and you always had to worry about dogs or zombies or something like that. And then 2002, I just learned this today, they released the Survivor version of Code Veronica. I guess this is rare, and I never heard of it. And in 2002, they released a Game Boy Color game called Resident Evil Gaiden. Now, this takes place on the cruise ship, something close to Revelations. I don't know if Revelations is a remaster or like a remake of Resident Evil Gaiden. I remember like going into Coconuts at the time. I think it was probably around 2002. And just remembering, like, I was looking at this and like, oh, it can't be good. It's on the Game Boy Color. And it was like $10. And it's one of the most expensive Game Boy Color games right now. I wish I would have bought it. And I never bought it. Never got to play it. And then a year later, they released Resident Evil Dead Aim and Outbreak. Outbreak was a strictly online game. You can play it, but if you didn't play online with somebody, it was very hard. Again, I couldn't get into this. I didn't like it. I didn't like the characters. And Resident Evil Dead Aim was like one of those like House of the Dead style. I remember seeing it and seeing that poster in Game Crazy, which was another local game store, which was upstate, which eventually came to Long Island. And remember seeing that and having the money, and I went to buy it, and the guy's like, oh, it's like a House of the Dead shooter, it's awesome. And I was like, no, I don't want it. And then a year later, they released Resident Evil Outbreak File 2. Never played this. Played the little one, the first one, for a little bit with my friends online. Like I said, I couldn't get into it. And then in 2005, people will argue that this is the best Resident Evil, and we're talking about Resident Evil 4. I do not think this is the best Resident Evil. It saw the return of Leon Kennedy for the first time in a long time that we got to play as him. I love him as a character. He's one of my favorite Resident Evil characters of all time. But this was lackluster. The treasure system in this game was insane until they remastered it for the PS4, because originally released for the PS2 and GameCube. They changed some things in the PS4 version. The treasure system for the GameCube version was insanity. And then in 2006, they released Resident Evil Deadly Silence. I never heard of this one either. If it was on the Wii or one of the handheld systems, I never played it. And then Resident Evil, the next year, released Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. Again, this is one of those House of the Dead style where you see the crosshair type shooters. I played this at a friend's house. I enjoyed playing it. We beat it, but it wasn't what Resident Evil is to me. I had fun. If they would have called this something else besides Resident Evil, it would have been okay, but they used Resident Evil characters, so probably would have got sued. 2009. At the time, I loved this game, but I learned to hate it. 2009 was the release of Resident Evil 5. This was a co-op where you played as Chris Redfield and Shiva. And Shiva, they had different weapons. Again, treasure system they brought back in this game wasn't as massive as what the original Resident Evil 4 was. There was certain things you had to do. They had secret treasures, and there was things you had to find, and you had to do certain things. And I mean, the weapon upgrades in this game, I loved. I loved some of the weapons that you got. Like if you upgraded the shotgun, you got like a Hydra 3-barrel sawn-off shotgun. And then if you upgraded this, you got like a hand cannon. And if you beat the game in under 5 hours, you got an infinite rocket launcher, which made the game incredibly easy. But I played this game so much and was helping everybody do everything. I was literally, I'll go through the whole story with you. I'll get you every treasure, get you every achievement that I can, that I know how to get. Apologize again. And I'll charge you 1,200 Xbox points. At the time was $20 a card. But I literally would play with you for days and run through the whole game. And I played this game so much that I could remember where every enemy is. I never died. I would literally toy with enemies, and I had infinite ammo on every gun, so I would just decimate, and people would just like, oh, thank you for doing this for me. Meanwhile, I was killing everything, and they weren't getting anything accomplished besides having everything done for them. In the same year that Resident Evil 5 was released, Darkside Chronicles was released. Again, I don't know what this is. I'm going to look into these games because Deadly Silence sounds something that I would enjoy. And then 2 years, we don't have another Resident Evil game for 2 years. Resident Evil Mercenaries 3D. Again, I don't play anything that's on handheld. Looking at a 3DS or any type of handheld system, I bought them in the past. The only game that I fully completed was the Mario and Luigi RPGs for the DS and A Link Between Worlds because Zelda is my favorite franchise of all time. Resident Evil being either a close second or third because it varies depending on the day. But yeah, then Resident Evil Revelations. Never played this, heard a lot of good things. Just not my cup of tea. I'm probably going to go back and play because I've never played it. Never played the sequel that was released maybe 4 years after. Yeah, 4 years after. So then in 2012, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, which is, there was 2 Resident Evil games released in this. So you can play as like Nemesis and Mr. X and kill Leon and make the bad guys win. This game was terrible. Hated everything about it. It was probably either rated, everybody will tell you it's either the worst or the second worst Resident Evil of all time. I despise this game. Remember, like, this idea is stupid, but my friend bought it for me for Christmas. Played it. Absolutely hated it. He said the same thing. He's like, I bought you a copy. I got me a copy. A game store was doing like buy one, get one free for like this super sale thing. And why not get 2 copies and we can play together? Hated the game though. And that same year, by far the worst Resident Evil was released. Resident Evil 6. This game is garbage. It brings in Albert Wesker's son, which I thought was going to be awesome. Return of Leon. You play as like 4 different main characters. And again, you're fighting Wesker at the end when he fell into a volcano at the end of the 5th. But whatever. I'm not going to speak much on this because this game is absolute ass. And then 2015, we had the release of Resident Evil Revelations 2. Again, I didn't play this. I never really got around to it. Hopefully soon, I'll be doing Let's Plays on here. I was doing Let's Plays of Journey to the Savage Planet, but it's just not my cup of tea. I can't get into it. It's way too clunky. But maybe if they release these where you can play them for free, when they release them for like $5 the most I'll pay for this, for a game that's this old, maybe I'll buy it. 2016 was the release of Umbrella Corps. I don't know what this is. I think it's one of those House of the Dead style shooters again. 2017, we had the release of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Now, if anybody doesn't know what Biohazard is, that's what they call Resident Evil in Japan. We call it Resident Evil, they call it Biohazard, so it's Biohazard 1, Biohazard 2, Biohazard 3. And I think theirs is called Biohazard 7 Resident Evil because the Resident Evil that resides in the house. So, this game was the first-person shooter style. I thought I was going to hate this. I absolutely loved this game. I love the whole, like, Maniac family and the story, the back to the old of bringing this to there and that to there type of thing. It brought back the old style Resident Evil with a new twist to it. And then we're going to get into probably the best Resident Evil ever, the remake of Resident Evil 2. They took a almost perfect game and made it perfect by adding like collectibles, infinite ammo. I'm probably sure you can get infinite ammo in the original one. I was young when I played it, never went through it and did it, but this game was awesome. You can get the rocket launcher, the Magnum, not the Magnum, machine gun, hand cannon. They added the Albert Wesker pistol from the Biohazard game that you use to kill the final boss. And then it's just a perfect game, in my opinion. If you love Resident Evil and you haven't played the remake, I highly recommend it. They added some cool little things to it too. The graphics are better. Different little bit of here, cutscenes, changed a few little things. And Mr. X, if you thought he was bad in the original, he's much worse in this one. He's relentless. 2020, we've seen the remake of Resident Evil 3. I hate Resident Evil 3. And I went back and played it again in the last couple of days. It took me like, you first run through, it's hard, there's very few animals. I ran through it very quickly. I died maybe like 3 times because the hunters can kill you in one swipe, which is ridiculous. Never happened in the original. Nemesis is far too stupid. His AI is retarded in this, unless you play on a harder difficulty, which is guaranteed. But he was, even playing on easy, he was relentless in the original. And they took out the water sample, the best part of the game, in the water treatment facility. They removed, because it was too hard and it took too long. But it was the best part of the game. Same year they released Resident Evil Resistance. Don't know anything about this one either. It's probably on either Switch or one of those other systems. Probably a handheld. Then we seen the release of Resident Evil 8 Village. Everybody shitted on this game. Again, I loved it. I love to see Ethan back. Continuing the story, the monsters that you fight in this game didn't have the same effect as they did for me in Biohazard, but the big 8-foot tall vampire lady Dismiss-Yu, or however else you want to pronounce it, I'm probably butchering the name, giant 8-foot tall vampire, and 3 sisters or daughters. That was the best part of one of the best parts of the game until you get later on. The whole Heisenberg fight, I hated. I didn't think that was Resident Evil style, but whatever. The ending to this game was something that I didn't expect. It was great. Hoping that they make a Resident Evil 9 very soon. But then 2022, Resident Evil Reverse, which was supposed to be released not too long after Resident Evil Village was released, but it took them a year to figure things out, and it's like a multiplayer online versus thing. And then 2023, we had a game I really didn't care about. I love Resident Evil, but I didn't care to see Resident Evil 4 remade again. Everybody was asking Code Veronica, and we're not getting it. And I think we're going to get a Resident Evil 5 remake, which I hope. They have the tendency to make this game great. Just change a lot of things. Don't have a co-op. Maybe you play as this part of the story as Shiva and this part of the story as Chris. And it could be tendency to have a great game. Thank you guys for watching. Tell me what your favorite moments of Resident Evil are. Maybe we'll do this again and we'll do the Resident Evil movies, because most of them are absolutely terrible, except for the animated ones. Some of those are terrible too. And we're going to get into it about that show that was god awful. The 2 shows that they made on Resident Evil, absolutely trash. They changed too many things, and terrible. Absolutely terrible. But like I said, what is your favorite, guys, Resident Evil? I told you mine. I want to hear yours. And what was your scariest moment in Resident Evil that made you jump out of your skin? I think it was Resident Evil 2 for me. They didn't do it in it only happens sometimes in the remake, but in Resident Evil 2, when you went downstairs in the police station and you went into the interrogation room and you grabbed the night plug or the rook plug, but it was one of the plugs that you had to stick into the wall with Leon. Liquor jumps through the fucking window, and I remember throwing my controller on the ground because it scared the shit out of me, and he killed me. After I did a bunch of shit and I was pissed and had to take a little bit of break before I threw my controller through the wall. But yeah, that was the scariest moment for me. And then in the original Resident Evil 4, there was a scene where you get, like, at the end where you walk up to, like, you're in this, like facility or, like, warehouse, and you open this, like, metal, like dumpster style thing, and there's a body bag in it, and as soon as you open the thing flails out, and, oh, I must have shot it, like, 15 times. It used to have those jump scares that made you almost shit your pants. Tell me your favorite Resident Evil moment. If you guys want me to do the Resident Evil movies, but it's going to be a lot of them getting shitted on. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. This is the Games of the Glory Days, and I am your host, Johnny Blitz, and I'll see you on the next one.